The young soldier thought it was just another late-night taxi ride from the airport. But when he noticed the driver's Special Forces ring catching the streetlight, he realized he was sitting behind a legend who had spent 20 years in missions that officially never happened. LaGuardia Airport at 11:47 p.m. was Marcus Williams' favorite hunting ground. Not for anything sinister, but for the steady stream of passengers who needed rides into Manhattan when the subway had stopped running and surge pricing made other ride services unaffordable. Marcus had been driving taxi number 4A7729 for 15 years, ever since retiring from his previous career at age 45. The Yellow Crown Victoria was old, with over 300,000 miles on the odometer, but it ran smooth and quiet through the city streets that Marcus knew better than most people knew their own neighborhoods. At 62 years old, Marcus looked like a typical New York cabbie. Gray hair, weathered face, and the patient expression of someone who had seen everything the city could throw at him. He wore the same outfit every shift: dark jeans, a button-down shirt, and a light jacket that concealed more than it revealed. What passengers couldn't know, was that Marcus Williams had been many things before he became a taxi driver. Things that required security clearances higher than most government officials possessed. Things that involved traveling to countries that didn't officially exist on any mission briefings. The ring on his right hand was the only visible reminder of that previous life. Most passengers never noticed it, a simple gold band with a small insignia that looked like costume jewelry to the casual observer. But to someone who knew what to look for, that ring told a story that could fill libraries of classified documents. Marcus preferred the night shift for several reasons. The pay was better, the traffic was lighter, and the passengers were usually too tired or drunk to make conversation. He'd learned to appreciate silence during 20 years of missions where talking could get you killed. That Tuesday night started like any other. Marcus had been parked in the taxi queue for 20 minutes when a young man in army dress blues approached his window. "JFK Airport?" the soldier asked, though his tone suggested it wasn't really a question. "Hop in," Marcus replied, noting automatically that the kid was maybe 22 years old, newly minted sergeant's stripes, and carrying himself with the stiff formality of someone fresh out of basic training. The soldier climbed into the back seat with his duffel bag and immediately pulled out his phone. "Sorry, driver, but I need to make some calls during the ride." "No problem," Marcus said, starting the meter and pulling away from the curb. In his rearview mirror, he could see the young man's reflection, tired, nervous, and trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Staff Sergeant Kevin Murphy was 23 years old and scared out of his mind, though he would never admit it to anyone. This was his first deployment, first time flying alone, and first time in New York City. In 6 hours, he would be on a flight to Germany, then to Afghanistan, where he would spend the next 15 months as a communications specialist with the 82nd Airborne. His father had been a Marine, his grandfather had fought in Korea, and Kevin felt the weight of family tradition pressing down on him like a physical force. But right now, in the back of a taxi at midnight, he just felt like a kid who was in way over his head. The taxi driver seemed nice enough. Older guy, quiet, professional. Kevin had expected a typical New York cabbie with an attitude, but this man just drove smoothly through the Queens traffic without complaint or commentary. Kevin tried to focus on the phone calls he needed to make. His girlfriend Sarah, his parents, his younger brother, who was still in high school. Each conversation was getting harder because he was running out of ways to say, "I'll be fine," when he wasn't sure that was true. Halfway through the ride, Kevin's phone battery died. "Shit," he muttered, then immediately felt embarrassed for cursing in front of the driver. "Sorry about that." "No worries," the driver replied calmly. "You got a charger?" "Yeah, but it's buried in my bag somewhere." The driver reached over to the passenger seat and handed back a universal phone charger. "Use this one." Kevin was surprised by the gesture. "Thanks. That's really helpful." "Been there?" the driver said simply. As Kevin plugged in his phone, he noticed something about the driver's hand that made him look twice. The man was wearing a ring, not a wedding band, but something else, something that looked military. Kevin had grown up around military jewelry, his father's Marine Corps ring, his grandfather's Korean War veteran pin, the various unit insignia that decorated their home. But this ring was different, more subdued, more serious somehow. In the dim light of the taxi, Kevin could make out what looked like a small winged dagger design on the ring's face. But it was too dark to see clearly, and he didn't want to stare. "You military?" Kevin asked, trying to sound casual. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "Used to be, long time ago." "What branch?" "Army." Kevin waited for more details, but the driver didn't elaborate. Most veterans, Kevin knew, were eager to share their service stories, especially with younger soldiers. This guy's reticence was unusual. "I'm 82nd Airborne," Kevin offered, hoping to build some connection. "Headed to Afghanistan for my first deployment." "Good unit," the driver said. "You'll do fine." The simple confidence in the statement somehow made Kevin feel better than all the elaborate pep talks he'd received from family and friends. As they hit a red light on the Queensboro Bridge, Kevin's phone screen illuminated the inside of the taxi. In the sudden brightness, he got a clear look at the driver's ring. Kevin's blood went cold. The insignia on the ring wasn't just military, it was Special Forces. Specifically, it was the distinctive unit insignia of Delta Force, the Army's most elite and secretive special operations unit. Kevin had studied military history extensively, partly out of genuine interest and partly to prepare himself for deployment. He knew that Delta Force operators were recruited from the best soldiers in other elite units. They underwent training so intense that most candidates didn't make it. They operated in complete secrecy, often in countries where the United States wasn't supposed to have military personnel. And one of them was driving a taxi in Queens at midnight. Kevin stared at the ring, trying to process what he was seeing. Delta Force operators didn't just retire and become cab drivers. They became private military contractors, or CIA operatives, or high-level security consultants. They didn't drive taxis. Unless... Kevin's mind raced through possibilities. Maybe the guy had been discharged for medical reasons. Maybe he'd had enough of the military life and wanted something completely different. Maybe he was undercover, though that seemed unlikely, given that he was openly wearing the ring. The light turned green, and the driver accelerated onto the bridge. In the rearview mirror, Kevin could see the man's eyes, alert, scanning, constantly aware of his surroundings in a way that had nothing to do with normal traffic safety. "Sir," Kevin said carefully, "that's a Special Forces ring, isn't it?" The driver was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a different weight than before. "You know your military insignia, Sergeant?" "My dad taught me. Marine Corps, 2 tours in Iraq. But he never saw anything like that ring." "Most people haven't." Kevin waited, but the driver didn't elaborate. Finally, Kevin's curiosity overcame his military courtesy. "Can I ask what unit?" The driver looked at him in the rearview mirror, evaluating. "What's your clearance level, Sergeant?" The question caught Kevin off guard. "Secret? Why?" "Then I can't tell you specifics. But let's just say I spent 20 years going places that don't appear on any maps, doing things that don't appear in any official records." Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. He was talking to a ghost, one of the phantom soldiers who fought America's shadow wars in complete anonymity. How does someone go from that to this? Kevin gestured around the taxi. The driver smiled slightly. "It's a longer story than we have time for tonight." As they entered Manhattan traffic, the driver seemed to make a decision. My name's Marcus Williams. Since you're about to deploy to a place where I spent considerable time, maybe you should hear some of it." Kevin leaned forward, suddenly wide awake. "I joined the Army in 1982, made it through Ranger School, then Special Forces selection. Spent 5 years with 5th Group doing standard SF missions." Marcus navigated traffic with unconscious skill while he talked. 1993. A recruiter approached me about trying out for a special unit. Very special. Selection was 18 months of the hardest training imaginable. Out of 200 candidates, 12 made it through. Kevin knew he was hearing about Delta Force recruitment. The next 20 years were spent in places you've never heard of, fighting enemies who officially didn't exist. Can you tell me about any missions? Somalia, 1993. I was part of the task force after Black Hawk Down. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, places I still can't name. 20 years of going where my country needed me. Why did you retire? Marcus's expression darkened. Because after 20 years of fighting in the shadows, I didn't know how to live in the light anymore. The hardest part about special operations isn't the missions, Marcus continued. It's coming home and pretending to be normal. Kevin listened intently. When you spend years operating under assumed identities, you start to lose track of who you actually are underneath all the training. Marcus pulled into the airport complex. I retired in 2008 with full benefits, commendations I can't talk about, and skills that don't translate to civilian employment. What do you put on a resume? 20 years of classified operations. What did you try first? Private military contracting. The money was incredible, but it was the same life without the patriotic justification. After 2 years, I realized I was addicted to the adrenaline, but destroying any chance of a normal life. Marcus stopped at a red light. I needed a job completely different from anything I'd done before, something that would force me to interact with regular people, regular problems. And you chose taxi driving? I chose a job where I could help people get where they need to go, without anyone's life depending on my performance, where the biggest crisis would be traffic jams instead of armed insurgents. Marcus pulled up to Terminal 7. It took me 3 years to decompress enough to sleep through the night, but gradually I remembered what it felt like to be a normal person. Marcus turned off the meter and faced Kevin directly. Sergeant Murphy, can I give you some advice for your deployment? Kevin nodded, understanding he was receiving guidance from someone who had seen more combat than most generals. Remember that you're not going over there to be a hero. You're going to do your job, follow orders, and come home safely. The guys who try to be heroes usually end up dead. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a small card. This is a veteran support group number. Most soldiers think they don't need support until they do. Keep this card. Kevin took the card, realizing it had only a phone number. And Sergeant? When you come back, remember that you won't be exactly the same person. That's normal. Don't fight it. Just make sure the changes are ones you can live with. Kevin felt emotional in a way he hadn't expected. Sir, do you ever regret leaving the military? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I miss the purpose, the brotherhood, but I don't miss the nightmares or the weight of carrying secrets I can never share. He looked at the terminal. Now I drive taxi, and at the end of each shift, I've helped dozens of people get where they needed to go safely. It's a different kind of service, but it's still service. Kevin reached for his wallet to pay the fare. What do I owe you? Marcus waved him off. On the house. Consider it a veteran helping out a future veteran. Sir, I can't let you do that. You're not letting me do anything. I'm choosing to do it. Marcus handed Kevin a business card with his number. When you get back from deployment, if you need someone to talk to who understands, call me. Day or night. Kevin took the card, feeling its weight. Thank you, sir. for everything. Just do your job over there and come home safe. That's all the thanks I need. Kevin climbed out with his duffel bag. As he walked toward the terminal, he turned to wave, but the taxi was already disappearing into airport traffic. On the back of the business card, Marcus had written, "The mission changes, but the service continues." 15 months later, Kevin stepped off a plane at JFK, changed by deployment. He pulled out the worn business card and dialed. "Marcus Williams." "Marcus, this is Kevin Murphy. You gave me a ride 15 months ago." "Sergeant Murphy, welcome home. How are you doing?" "Different. Like you said I would be." "Want to talk about it?" "Yeah, I think I do." 20 minutes later, taxi 4A7729 pulled up. Kevin climbed in. "You were right about everything," Kevin said. They talked about deployment, loss, and coming home to a world that didn't understand. Marcus listened, understood, and guided Kevin toward the support he needed. 2 years later, Marcus got a text. "Just got accepted to law school, using my GI Bill to become a veterans' rights attorney. Thank you for showing me that service comes in many forms. Kevin?" Marcus smiled, saved the number in his contacts, and started driving home through the empty streets of Queens. He thought about the thousands of passengers he'd driven over the years, the countless conversations, the small moments of human connection that had helped him remember who he was underneath the classified missions and military training. At a red light, Marcus looked down at his Special Forces ring, still worn on his right hand after all these years. It represented a life of service that most people would never know about, missions that would remain classified long after he was gone. But it also represented something else now, the understanding that service didn't end when you took off the uniform. It just changed forms. Marcus Williams was no longer a Delta Force operator, but he was still serving his country, one passenger at a time, one conversation at a time, one late-night ride at a time. Sometimes the most important missions were the ones that nobody would ever know about. Sometimes the most dangerous warriors choose the quietest second acts. Sometimes the people who fought in the shadows serve in the light. And sometimes the person driving your taxi carries more classified secrets than most government officials will ever know. So I ask you, have you ever met someone whose humble job masked an extraordinary past? Someone who served in ways you never could have imagined? Share their story in the comments. Because here on the Veteran Chronicles, we believe that service takes many forms and heroes often hide in plain sight. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it. Help us honor the veterans who continue serving long after their military careers end. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, remember that the person helping you get where you need to go might have stories that would change how you see the world.